You're tuning into the Journey to Your Best Self podcast, where we explore the past holistic well-being, personal growth, and living a fulfilling life. Each episode, we bring you insightful conversations, practical tools, and inspiring stories to help you integrate your mind, body, and spirit on your journey to becoming your best self. Let's dive in and embark on this journey together. All right. Welcome back to the Journey to Your Best Self podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian O'Neill, joined by my co-host and resident expert, clinical hypnotherapist, certified life coach, and yoga instructor, Tara O'Neill. At Journey to Your Best Self, we explore the path to holistic well-being, personal growth, and living a fulfilled life. In each episode, we bring you insightful conversations, practical tools, and inspiring stories to help integrate into your mind, body, and spirit on your journey to becoming your best self. Today, we are thrilled and excited to have a man of many talents on board with us today, Mr. David McBee. He's a highly accomplished keynote speaker, digital marketing expert, cancer survivor, and children's author. So with his extensive knowledge, he's going to share a plethora of information with us today, a lot of strategies and skills and techniques that he has utilized effectively throughout his journey, overcoming a lot of trials and tribulations that he's faced. We're definitely going to touch on his series, DJ's Off-Road Adventures, which teaches kids about facing their fears and working together as a team. We're really excited. Well, we've almost exclusively focused on working with adults and different things that adults have to go through in their lives, but the idea of communicating a lot of what we talk about at your one self and journey to your best self with children is really exciting, right? Because in fact, we were all children at one point. David, without further ado, welcome aboard.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you guys today.
No problem. There was so much there that you have going on.
We don't have to ask any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So where to begin? I think that it's kind of fascinating that you've kind of had many stages of your life and you ended up most recently with this really successful series of books that you've written for children. So if we could start there maybe and work backwards, how did somebody that was involved in marketing and advertising become a children's author?
Well, I have always had this desire to do external projects outside of work. Because I'm working 50 hours a week isn't enough. I feel like I need to do something else. And that has taken a lot of different shapes over the years, everything from network marketing and all those fun things to starting little small businesses. I didn't really start writing children's books for the money. It's actually kind of expensive project because you have to pay an illustrator to, draw all those pages. But I had an experience that basically just felt like it needed to be turned into a children's book. And I'll try to make this story as short as possible. But basically, I've been into Jeeps my entire life, but I never really discovered what true Jeeping was until Instagram came along and I discovered what it looked like in Colorado and Utah. And I was like, I need to take my Jeeps there. And so I got invited to go to these places and quickly discovered that I have a massive fear of shelf roads. And what that is, for people who don't fully understand, it's when you're on a road or a trail and it's just a shelf on you're 10,000 feet in the air or whatever it is. So
yeah, this might be a little bit of an unknown to our East Coast listeners, but yeah, it's something you see out on Mountain West, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Missouri and I live in Kansas, so we don't have many hills here, right? So I get out there to Moab and I get on one of our very first trails and I find myself on a trail that's maybe 12 feet wide and it's rocky, so I'm doing a lot of this. And it's a 70-foot drop on both sides. Wow. And I'm like, what am I doing? Why do they even allow people to drive on this? This is absolutely crazy. But my friends had driven over it and I'm following them. And I had a massive panic attack. Like, I put the car in park. My heart is racing now just thinking about it. I wanted to turn around, drive the 15 hours back to Kansas where it was safe and flat. But my friends kind of just came to my rescue and they held my hand. They kind of walked me through the process. They helped me get past that moment. And I still have fear of those shelf roads today, but I've also discovered that facing that fear and going into those places is the most exciting and fun thing. That's my absolute favorite thing. My happy place now
Wow.
is the place that used to terrify me, right? And so I would tell people that story, and they were like, "You sound like the little engine that could." And I'm like, "No, I'm the little blue Jeep that could." Oh. And so, yeah, that's when DJ's Off-Road
Ah,
Adventures became a reality. So
Wow.
DJ
Excellent.
is me, and he has a panic attack, and his friends help him overcome his fears. It's a lot of fun.
yeah.
Unbelievable. Do you think that there's something about how your experience led to that the authenticity that shines through and makes it, more felt by the parents and children that read it?
That's a good question. I think that a really creative person could come up with a story very similar without actually having the experience. But what I've discovered is when I read the story to children at like local elementary schools and stuff, they like, "Oh, the story's great." Then I show them pictures of me in those locations with my Jeep, and I show them the cliffs, and I show them the and they just come alive. They can't believe that this little cartoon it was based on real events, and that just gives it a texture that I don't think other children's books maybe have.
Yeah, excellent.
Absolutely.
Good answer.
And in terms of, because I struggle sometimes with the definition of the word authenticity. But from what you're describing, I think humans crave and really enjoy and are inspired by people that are authentic. And that to me is overcoming your fear and, sharing it. So you could say that you did this, and that energy is children being very sensitive energetically, they can pick up on that, right? And so they can be inspired. So, could you, can you speak to how you take that energy of inspiration? I heard you on another podcast saying that inspiration is divinely inspired, and that that means a lot to me. Can you speak to how you bring that into other areas of your life, perhaps, or what that really means to you?
Yeah, I think the main theme of that is that, all things that are created, they start with an idea, right? But before the idea is the experience or the emotion. And that comes from another place. I believe that's God, right? I believe that God did not stop talking to us after the Bible was written. The prophets didn't go away. I actually believe he talks to us every day through art and music and movies and books. You watch a movie like Toy Story. Buzz and Woody, Woody has this jealousy over Buzz, and then they eventually get past this and they create a friendship, right? Like, where did that come from? Was that someone's actual experience? Or was that God's way of saying, hey, it's okay to be jealous of someone, but you need to see things from their point of view. And then, once you do that, you can embrace them in a way that you weren't able to at first. So for me to say that God helped me write my books, I'm totally fine with that, right? He gave me those experiences, or she gave me those experiences, whatever that is, And then, like, I didn't ever want, no part of me ever said, I want to go write children's books. That was never a goal of mine, but it just felt like something I had to do. And so how do I bring that to other parts of my life? I think just a friend of mine says to use candor, is the best way to like sell a product or a service, because when people know that you are honest and trustworthy, that makes them want to buy from you. And I think that's true in all things in life. It's just to be candid and authentic and transparent. And not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to like what you create. But that's not why you do it. You do it for yourself, because being authentic feels a whole lot better than being fake.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, feelings. Go ahead, Brett.
No, before you continue on that, just this little side trail, an off-road trail where we got the Jeep, so we can take we can go off-road. Can you speak to experience coming from kind of the center of the country, breadbasket. There's farmland, flat. The East Coast, we don't go much above 1,800 feet. The experience of seeing the Rockies, or for the first time just being out there, that's like divine in a way too, right? You said there's messages from the divine in all things around us, maybe a little bit different than what you had to overcome, but just first seeing that and then wanting to come back to that area. I mean, it's pretty amazing for those who didn't know what step roads were, seeing those mountains for the first time. What's it like out there?
So my father was with me on that very first trip, and there's a spot just past Denver on the highway when you peak and you can really see the mountains. They just greet you. And I looked over at him and he was crying. And I'm
Wow.
like, what's wrong with you? You're so emotional. He goes, I just love the mountains. It's just so beautiful. And that was about 7 years ago. And now when I see those same mountains, I just cry like a stupid baby. There's a gift, in nature that we get away from. We sit in our home offices, we scroll on our phone, we go to the movies, we go to baseball games, but when you get out in nature, you can just feel the presence of a higher power, right? There's just something so special. When I meditate, and I try to meditate pretty regularly, I actually go out in my backyard. I've got a little fire pit. I'm backed up against the woods, and that is the place where I feel most connected, to a higher power, to the spirit realm, whatever you want to call it. And it's because I can hear the wind through the leaves. I can smell the earth. There's just something special about being outside, and it just goes to another level. East Coasters, Midwesterners, we have to trek out to those mountains because they are a gift. They are a gift. And my friend actually hikes them. He does the 14,000 foot hikes. And I'm like, you can get there so much faster in a Jeep. Like,
That's
and it's
fabulous.
easier on your knees. But at the end of the day, like, that just connection with nature there's just something, it's hard to describe.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Well said.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much wonderful, so many wonderful things and directions I want to go in. But I guess I will say, yes, we are big proponents of nature and it feeling that oneness, right? So you don't have to have a certain deity or, even call it God, but like Mother Nature can be, your solace and where you find your peace and surrender. You mentioned I didn't plan on writing children's books. And I've had a lot of experience where it's like, I didn't really ask to do this. I didn't ask to this. And so to me, that shows an element of surrendering to a higher power, right? You're not doing A, B, C, D, the conditioned, maybe trajectory of success. What could you share with our audience of like when to answer that calling? Like, where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your heart? Do you feel it in your soul? Did you journal one day? Did you get support from a friend? When can listeners, when can they act on it, or when should they act on it?
That's a great question. I think the best thing that a person can do is if they will quiet their mind on occasion, they will discover things about themselves that have gone unnoticed. I think that I mentioned this earlier, we're so sucked into our screens and our jobs that it's very rare for us to just look up and quiet our minds, just to listen to what our heart is telling us. But I think it's in those moments that we grow. I think that if I were to go back in time and talk to a younger version of me, that would probably want to be one of the very first things I would say, is to stop being so sucked into whatever project you're doing. You're trying to make your first million, whatever it is. I get that. You're trying to get the girl. Okay, just pause for a moment and just listen. Listen to yourself. Listen to your heart. Listen to your subconscious, because it may know things about you that you're not paying attention to. Now, for me, I had a lot of people around me that inspired me to write the children's books. I would tell them that story that I just shared with you. And on more than one occasion, people were like, you got to find ways to tell that story, because I was absolutely terrified out of my mind. And fear stops a lot of people from doing the things that they don't even know, but could potentially love doing. And I think back, if I had gotten off of that mountain, turned around and gone home, I would have missed out on so many beautiful and amazing adventures and experiences that I have had in that Jeep and shared with the off-road community. It would have been a tragedy. And so I always tell people, whatever that fear is, you've got to face it and get past it, because what's on the other side could be something so unbelievable to you. I don't know if I totally answered your question.
No,
I kind of
that's
went off on a tangent.
that's beautiful. No, absolutely. Like I can viscerally feel your passion. And absolutely it is, I read somewhere recently, another way to describe anxiety is a version of you being shed, right? An old identity that you are able to leave behind. So while I know we can define anxiety in a lot of different ways, I really liked that, because, the only way, to the next level is through and then shedding that fear. So that's so inspirational and beautiful. And sometimes I think that, like, you are like that nudge. So I hope we have some listeners that are, like, they have that idea, they have this spark within them. Find people that support you. Find people that will encourage you to push through your fears. Absolutely.
I hope that's the case. And if there are any budding children's book authors, I have some advice and I'd be happy to share that with them.
Awesome.
Yes,
You had
definitely.
mentioned clearing your mind, and then previously you had mentioned the outdoor meditation. Was that a way that you were able to clear your mind, or is that a more recent practice that you've taken on?
Yeah, so the books are several years old now. In fact, I launched the very first book right as COVID happened, which is really bad timing, by the way. But I was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago.
Okay.
And when I was diagnosed with cancer, I started researching every possible way to beat it, right? And certainly I'm a fan of Western medicine. I take medication on a regular basis that I think is really, really helping. But they also never really discovered the cause. So I have a cancer called neuroendocrine tumor cancer, and it can be in any of your endocrine systems. It's the same cancer that Steve Jobs had and Aretha Franklin had. He had it in his pancreas. I'm not sure where Aretha had it. Mine is in my liver, and it was in my intestines. They did a long surgery. They took like 12 tumors out of me. I've still got a couple really small ones in my liver that are just kind of hanging out. I call them Fred and Barney because they're about the size of a fruity pebble, and they're fine. They don't really wreck my life at all. As long as it's just the two of them, I'm fine with that. But I wanted to figure out what had caused my cancer in the first place. I'm not a smoker. I don't eat the best, but I didn't eat terrible either, and I exercise. So I read a lot. And I came to the conclusion that my cancer was either caused or exacerbated by stress and anxiety. And I used to have a really bad temper, so anger issues as well. And so with that in mind, and this was based on a lot of research about how stress and anxiety can manifest physically, right? And a lot of people will support that. With that in mind, I started trying to find ways to overcome those issues. And meditation was definitely one of the first things that I discovered. Probably the second thing I would say to a younger self is find 10 minutes a day to meditate. Because as silly as that sounds, it has absolutely altered my reality. It makes me more patient. It makes me more kind. It gives me perspective on oh, this campaign isn't running properly. Oh, it's the end of the world for this client. No, it's not. Like, they're going to be fine if their ads don't run, David. Just get on it the next day or after you're done meditating. Like, it helped me prioritize work and health. And so, yeah, meditation it's something I kind of do on and off. It's not I'm not as what's the word I'm looking for?
Consistent.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As I should be, but it has made a big difference in my life.
Excellent. Tara, that's something that you discuss and theorize about a lot. I could almost feel your energy coming across the screen when he said the causal nature to be stress and anxiety potentially. So do you want to take over?
I mean, so, and I think, maybe, the consistency, like, to me with yoga and meditation, it's like, if it gets away from me, it's something like, it's so innate, it'll like always come back, right? It's like, it'll always get back to it. So if anyone has like lost their practice, or like, oh man, I haven't done this, like, and like, you can always, like, it's just part of life, like, right? It's just kind of coming back to it once again. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I do have this could be a little bit separate of our topics, but did you tie in the Eastern liver sometimes representing anger in traditional Chinese medicine? Did you come across that at all?
Not a lot. I do remember reading something about that, and an interesting. This maybe this is on track with what you're asking, but right after my surgery, and they cut out 25% of my liver. And the tumors that were deep inside the liver, they actually stuck a needle in and like electrocuted them, right? Because you can't get those out, you can't cut them out. So I'm sitting on my couch watching a movie. I've got something like 47 staples in my stomach and area, abdominal area. And we get to a really emotional part of the movie. Like a part that, like, and I'm an emotional guy. I cry at movies. I don't mind sharing that, right? I could feel the pain in my liver in a way I never had in all of my life. I remember I was watching Come From Away. It's a musical on Apple TV about 9/11, and it's just beautiful, and it just makes me cry every time I watch it. But I could feel, it was almost like someone was sticking a knife in my liver. And I thought, I am experiencing this feeling in my liver. And it wasn't when I laughed. It wasn't when I walked. It was only when I was really, really feeling emotional. And that was one of the things that made me help me realize, hey, these feelings aren't just feelings I'm experiencing in my head, because that's where we think they all are, right? Oh, you suck at this. You could do better at this, blah, blah, blah. It's all going on in your head. It's not. It's going on in your entire body. There's no evidence that the soul of a human being is connected to the brain. Is it the heart? We don't know. It's the whole body, right? And when I felt that pain in my liver, I knew that emotions, anxiety, stress, pain, anger, I was experiencing them in my liver.
Yeah.
And so now I'm just more cautious about how I stopped watching a lot of like violent. I used to love Game of Thrones. I don't watch that anymore, because every time I see that violence, I can feel it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it's a huge aspect of, living a holistic life, is like when we stop disconnecting our mind from our body, like there's so much enrichment that we can experience. And to your point, like, feel like our whole body is sending us messages, and we have emotions stored in there. Sometimes they're unprocessed emotions. And in the traditional Chinese medicine and some of the Eastern traditions, they believe, or they study it as if there's an imbalance in, like, the gallbladder, for example, that could be resentment. In the liver, that could be anger. So, if there's like a digestive problem, it could be being stuck in the past and like not able to move forward. And so, it does not that we have to believe all of it or like live by it, but it can really give us clues as to what's going on like with our entire body and emotions, right? We now know, like, obviously most people can feel like their heart when they feel some joy, right? Similarly, like, why not for the rest of it? Like, we have a lump in our throat, we can't speak, right? So we always invite people to start paying more attention to their body. So that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. It means a lot to me, and our listeners.
I actually work with a Native American healer who always, he sits me down. He's like, we talk about a topic, and then he's like, close your eyes, tell me how that feels in your body. And at first I'm like, I don't feel anything in my body. Like, it took me a few sessions, right?
Sure.
But then I started really paying attention. And sure enough, everything can be felt in your body.
Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned unprocessed emotions, right? One of the things that I am incredibly guilty of is I read a lot of self-help books, right? And a lot of those self-help books revolve around the concept of having a positive mental attitude, right? So when something negative would happen in my life, I was like, well, I'm going to have a positive mental attitude about this. And I wouldn't process the thing that was causing me anxiety, stress, or pain. I would just push it down and be positive.
Yeah.
Like, when people read my first book, Everyday Lessons Every Day, and it really went into all my anger issues, they were like, is that even you writing that, David? That doesn't sound like you at all. I'm like, that's because you get to see positive, always on David. But that was going on. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're ready to move past that. Like, being positive is a great step one, like, absolutely. But then there's step two, and it's like, oh, it's not maybe supposed to just be all positive. And then you go a little deeper, right? You go a little deeper and a little deeper. And so we're doing this so we can help people to feel their stuff before it stores up and their cup gets too full and they do have an illness and it is serious. So I think you're inspiring us to help people to not fill their cup up and get it.
I just had a moment. Everything we just discussed is basically the concept of Pixar's Inside Out movies.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's okay. Like, Joy always wanted Riley to be happy.
That's right.
But Riley needed to feel sadness.
Yeah.
And in the sequel, I won't give it away, but anxiety plays a role, and joy, and we have to experience all of those emotions. And so somewhere somebody was creatively inspired, possibly divinely, to write this movie to help us learn these lessons.
Yeah. I know. I think of that. I think of Monster Inc. as being a big metaphor too, like with like the energetics of it, and but that's for another podcast episode. But yeah, absolutely, and that is a pattern that I'm also recognizing. A lot of what we're seeing, in Hollywood and in books, like it's all, and I think we probably share this similar view of like we are all one, on a quantum physical level. So, what's happening here can be happening there, can be all happening simultaneously. So we all have access to this quantum field, which is huge. Was there a moment or a book that really changed it? Like, there's somehow self-help books that, are a little bit redundant or repetitive. Was there one that was like, oh, this is different?
I don't know if this would definitely not fall in the self-help genre, but the book that has had the most impact on me, and to that point specifically about all of us being one, is a book called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. Are you guys familiar with that book?
Yeah. Yes.
In my opinion, whether you believe or not the premise that Neil actually had a conversation with God is irrelevant, because what that book teaches feels so incredibly true in your heart and soul when you read it. It's my all-time favorite book. I've read it a dozen times. I sit with it every weekend with a highlighter and I go through it. It has impacted me in such a positive way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's that repetition of going back to it too, that probably is very helpful. as well. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
that's actually something that I was going to talk about too, because you are someone who faces these challenges and have definitely a holistic approach and attitude, and you're attempting to connect mind, body, and spirit, but you don't shy away or just kind of let things pass by. You overcome the challenges on the step road. And in your field of marketing and advertising, right, that is something that is really going to test the stress and anxiety levels. And you said these practices helped with the anger issues, but you didn't leave and do something else, right? That would, in theory, be easier to deal with. You stayed with it, and can't imagine those external factors aren't there now. So how do you kind of currently maintain this new David McBee, despite, we always hear about so much burnout in these industries, right? How are you able to keep it even keeled and still be successful?
That's a great question that I am going to struggle to answer, honestly. I think that the stress that I spoke about earlier, that I believe manifested itself as a dozen little tumors in my body, wasn't because my job was really hard or that I was being hit with really negative things happening all the time, right? Like, I enjoyed my job. I love my job, and I've loved it for as long as I've been doing it. Every job I've ever had, I kind of loved. But I think my mistake was in just living it too intensely, getting up way too early, skipping lunches, working late, going back to my home office at 10 o'clock after my wife fell asleep and doing more work. Tony Robbins talks about this a little bit, how like he used to like survive on just a handful of hours of sleep because he was always going. And then recently he's discovered, just how important sleep is and how he prioritizes sleep. That was one of the number one things my oncologist told me that I could do. He said, you need to get more sleep.
Wow.
He said, if you
Wow.
are awake, you are not healing. If you are asleep, you are potentially healing. Like,
Wow.
that is the moment when your body heals. So I'm a 9 hours a night guy now. And I think that, I'm still doing the same job. In fact, I've got more responsibilities in 2024 than I've had in a very, very long time. But I also walk and I get up and I play 5 minutes of a video game, or I sit down for lunch away from my desk and watch television or go out and meditate. Like, I have found that balance, right? And it's crazy. I'm probably spending an hour of every single day now doing stuff for me. Everything from laundry to reading a book. So technically I may be working a few less hours than I used to, but I still get all my work done. I'm still as effective. And if there's a message I can give to entrepreneurs and business people who are like running, that's it. You can accomplish all of your goals and still make time for yourself and your health and your well-being. Just, you've got to make that a priority. Because you know what? When you are a ghost at your own funeral and you are observing the people who have come to say goodbye to you, they are not going to talk about how successful you were.
Excellent. And there's got to
Yeah,
be, that's great advice. And there, I would imagine there is a quality versus quantity component too, right? When you're geeking out at 10:30, 11, is your mindset and your execution going to be as good as it was, 10:30, 11 a.m. that morning, right? I think a lot of these people that are starting out, or even vets, or you're competing against the political one was a great example, I think, because it seems like we're in constant campaign season for like the past 10 years. So you're competing against another team. You're keeping up with the Joneses or really trying to grind it, and you think, oh, what's going to separate me is putting more hours in, and I'm just going to live at this desk or in front of this computer. But like you had said, you can be putting less man hours, but if they're better hours because you're at a better headspace and you're more energized, you'll actually be more focused. So less hours can actually be more productive hours.
I'm pretty sure there's research to back that up too. I don't have it
Yeah.
memorized, but
I think they said after 50 hours that it's like your quality decreases like significantly for entrepreneurs out there. And plus, it's, it is the quality in terms of, your soul's purpose. Like, are you bringing the energy of the divine, of God, of Mother Nature into your work? And is that threading if you're working 70 hours a week? Not to judge, but, just trying to put things in perspective.
well, in my 20s, I remember a very successful entrepreneur saying, if you will work hard right now, if you will work weekends, you will work long hours, you just really, really put everything into it, you'll be able to retire 10, 20 years before all your peers. Like, hey, guess what? You don't know that you're going to be alive to retire. You know what? You're alive right now. So make the best of now. That is my advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, so kind of to dive into that, could you say that cancer was a teacher to you? And can you, even if it's not maybe, the headline that might, be on the most compassionate living magazine, can you say like thank you to cancer?
Yeah, actually, I say that a lot. I, I, sorry. I say that a lot actually because I think there are a lot of people who talk about battling cancer and winning the battle. And I've never really liked that metaphor for two reasons. Number one, that assumes that when you die, you lost the battle. That's not even right. And number two, who are you battling? Fred and Barney are a part of me. I put them there somehow, some way, right? That's my cancer, right? And some people will not agree with this either, especially cancer victims or people who've lost cancer, people to cancer. But I think we choose everything that happens to us in our lives. We don't understand it right now. You'd say, no, I would never choose that. But I got to tell you something. Cancer has made my life infinitely better. I am a more patient husband. I am a more loving father. I am a more grateful human. I am a better friend. I am hopefully more inspiring to the world. Cancer has done a lot of really good things for me. I'm healthier overall. I cut down a tree last week and I was breathing so heavy, like I know that would have gave my dad a heart attack at this age, right? But my heart was pumping hard because I exercise every day because I have cancer, right? Like there have been so many good things that have come from this. And if I'm going to go back to if the day comes that cancer wins, it will be because that was my time. But the time between that diagnosis and the time that I pass to the next incarnation, it's really going to be a good time.
That's
I'm
amazing.
the best version of myself I've ever been.
Yeah.
That's amazing and very inspiring. Can you talk about how, as an author, promoting children's book, reading was critical? You talked about the challenges of the screens. You talked about a lot of books that you have read and influences later on in life. If you weren't so open-minded to being a lifelong learner, right? How did that help you? How can that help others, right, to find answers and to overcome obstacles where they might just be resigned and give up? How has being a lifelong learner helped you in your journey and just to keep being successful and overcoming different challenges you faced?
So, do you remember the movie The Matrix? And
Of course.
Neo finds himself like in the real world and he wants to learn to fly a helicopter. So they just plug him into this thing and all of a sudden he has the knowledge to fly a helicopter. You remember that scene?
Absolutely.
We don't live in that world.
Movie.
We can't do that. The closest thing we have is books. The wisdom of hundreds and thousands of years of human knowledge exists, but it's in the pages of books. And we have to be disciplined enough to open those pages and read them to learn. when someone tells me they don't read, I just feel sad for them. I just feel sad for them. That's like if someone were to come up to you and say, I've never had chocolate ice cream and I don't want chocolate ice cream, you'd be like, what the hell is wrong with you? Chocolate ice cream's the best. Look at all the people enjoying chocolate ice cream. So very early on, I discovered books in my early 20s and the impact that they had on me. And I loved what they did for me. I loved the way they made me smarter, friendly, a better salesperson, and better entrepreneur. That's really was my main focus in my 20s, right? I didn't really get into self-help. It was all about success books, right? But then I shifted. And there was a time when my marriage wasn't going so great because I was being an impatient ass. So I picked up Men Are From Mars or Women Are From Venus. I picked up all the different books that helped my relationship grow. And those books saved my marriage. The 5 Love Languages was absolutely instrumental in helping my wife and I overcome some issues. And so I look at the world and I go, you're not a learner? Why not? Why would you say no to that? Now, I'm probably speaking to an audience of people who are listening to a podcast about, self-improvement. So I'm probably, they're all like, yeah, David, you're right. But there are definitely people out there who just aren't taking advantage of that. And you know what? That's okay. That's their journey. Maybe in their next incarnation, they'll be more open to that, right? I just know what it's done for me. And I pay my kids to read sometimes. I'm like, you got to read this book. Now that my son's 24, he'll read them on his own. But when he was like 18, I was giving him $100 to read How to Win Friends and Influence People, right?
Yeah.
Just to get the ball rolling. And the same thing with my daughter. Don't sweat the small stuff. She's 16 years old and she's fretting about every little terrible thing that's happening with all her girlfriends. I'm like, you've got to read this. And it helps.
It does. And I have so much to say about that. Thank you for sharing. Well, for one, I like to think all the answers are within us, right? But yet, which is true. However, the secrets of the universe are also found in texts and books out there. So while the world is fighting about what they're not even sure what they're fighting about, like there are answers in books that you can find, be it the Bhagavad Gita or the Vedas or the Bible or Conversations with God, the Power of Now, like whatever get pick one up and
I'm
read
reading
it.
The Power of Now right now. Crazy
Yes,
that you chose that one.
Love it. Yeah, that's my Conversations with God. That's a highlighted one, daily read. But and like you said, I do agree also, some people maybe that's not their path, but I do want to remind people because I've fallen trapped to this is also like maybe getting stuck on like some quotes or some blogs and like it's still not the same experience of taking the book that the author like has read, like Eckhart Tolle, for example, opening the book, reading it, processing it, reading it some more. Like there is this experience that happens when you read a book, especially one that has meaning to you or that you're being called to. So I would encourage people to maybe not like hop around too much, like going from this to that to this to that, like, have it be a book that maybe you highlight, you keep by your bedstand. Like, I'll usually have like an entertainment book, a spiritual book, and like nonfiction book, and like I'll shift around. But I would encourage, even like you're saying, a lot of our listeners are open, very, very open. But I would say, go even a little deeper in our culture, even, with Instagram, you can use it for good. But I know like I have Instagram and I'll just read a bunch of, spiritual like quotes. But then I'm like, okay, this is just a little surface level. Like it's great to get me out of a funk, but to go and like do the I would always encourage people to kind of go a little deeper and get the full story. And the energy that is behind it. I remember listening to The Power of Now and hearing Eckhart Tolle's voice, like just through me. It was a completely different experience. But it doesn't have to be a spiritual book. Brian, I come from like a family of very avid readers. My grandmother is, doing dances right now with the angels that we're talking about this. She'd read several books a week. So it doesn't have to be, this self-help book. Like you're saying, it could be an entrepreneurial book. It could be a fantasy book. It could be whatever. But get lost in that. Like get lost in that and find yourself at the same time. So I know I'm kind of all over the place. So thank you for sharing that because it's really such a powerful message. Like the secrets of the universe are here in us and in books. So that all being said, tell me what your one takeaway from the power of now has been.
Oh, you know what? I'm still pretty early in it, but I like, so far I like the fact that, like I have observed my mind going berserk without me controlling it. Like all the talking that's going on up there, now I can sit back and observe it and go, oh, that wasn't me talking. There's something else going on there. So that's kind of interesting. Like I said, I'm still pretty early in, but
no, absolutely. Yeah, no, and
am I on the right
it's
track?
trippy. It's trippy because you're like, wait, where am I? Who am I? Like, in yoga, we'll say you're not your feelings, you're not your thoughts. And that's what we identify with. So it's like, what do you mean I'm not my feelings and thoughts? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I would encourage people to go on their own deep dive.
Cool.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Brian,
but
go
there's
ahead.
so much more of a holistic experience when, you read the whole book or you get more than just a passage or a quote. I mean, to your little engine that could, reference earlier to get it to, books that I'm more familiar with. I think I can. We all know the quote, right? But that's not as impactful if you haven't read the whole story, the trials and tribulations, right? If we just say DJ faces his fear, if we don't know the situation, the experience, the anxiety that led to it, and then how he, was able to overcome it, it's not as much of a holistic and a fulfilling, journey. So you definitely have to, you definitely get more, reading and then the context and all different kinds of things. And, there's different parts that you might not just connect with one specific quote that's trending on Instagram. Can you talk a little bit about, 16-year-old to bring her back into the spotlight, but that's a real target for phones and social media. Can you talk about some of the things that you see that are negative out there, how we can leverage social media for good or maybe its intended purpose when the creators were coming up with Alphabet and MySpace and things initially, right? The intention was for everything to be positive that was being created. Where have things kind of gone wrong? Where can social media be used in a positive light now?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with social media is that people are just cruel, or they can be, right? But so is the world, so are people. It's how you respond to that I think really defines the way you use social media. As an example, I have a TikTok for DJ's Off-Road Adventures. So, just trying to promote my books out there, and I do some fun stuff with Jeeps on this TikTok, right? And one of the things that I did was my daughter has a pink Jeep and I have a blue Jeep. So on April Fool's Day, I switched our doors, and I
That's
made a
amazing.
TikTok of that. And in the process, I lifted up her door in kind of an awkward way, and I almost dropped it, and I looked like a complete idiot, and I looked weak, right? And this TikTok has gotten over 4 million views. And the reason it's gotten so many views is because people are constantly commenting about what a wuss I am. Go to the gym. My grandmother could pick up that door. I'm 5'0" and I can do it. Like, what's wrong with you, right? To which, could be very, very hurtful. When I read the comments to my wife, she goes all mama bear and she wants to like fight them. And I'm like, they have no filter. They don't think of there's like a human on the other end of this. So I respond by saying things like, yeah, my mom smoked when she was pregnant with me. So, or I just embrace it and I get goofy
Yeah.
with it, right? Like, I think one of the reasons the video has so many views is because there's so many cruel comments, and then there's so many of me just like digging in and having fun with them.
Wow.
I don't think that completely answers your question, except to say that like social media is the experience that you create. I have a friend who had a really negative experience on social media, and she just completely bailed on it. But in the process of completely bailing on it, she also misses out on some of the fun things. Like, I wish people happy birthday, like a lot of people do on social media. And I think there's nothing more fun than opening Facebook on your birthday and just seeing all those wonderful messages from friends. Or I just posted about the fourth DJ book we're working on it, right? And I got all this amazing support from people. I'm like, oh yeah, people do want this book. That makes me feel good. I think the social media is the experience you create. You can be cruel, you can be kind, you can be loving, just like in the real world. Now, as for teenage girls, they are mean. They are so mean. And I think the worst thing, and I don't know how to avoid this, but is when they post pictures of themselves doing stuff and you're not invited, right? FOMO is absolutely huge to a teenage girl, and they just take it so personally. So I don't know. I used to tell my daughter, like, listen, I know you want to post this picture of you and your girlfriends at Starbucks doing this thing, whatever you're doing, but who is that helping? Like, how is that beneficial to anyone out there in the world except Starbucks, right? Like, if you're going to put something on social media, it should be to either educate someone or entertain them or maybe engage a little bit, but to just kind of show that you're doing something special with your friends and some other people aren't, it can be very hurtful. This happened to me actually a little bit. I travel a lot for my job. I've been to 49 states. I travel so much. And I used to post, hey, I'm in Philly at this baseball game, or I'm in, Orlando, whatever it is. And a buddy of mine who can't afford to travel, he just was very transparent with me. He goes, sometimes it kind of is hard to see your Facebook, David. He said, sometimes it's hard to watch you live this amazing experiences, and I'm, stuck at home. And I'm like, you're right. I'm going to dial that back a little because that's not helping anyone. So
well, if we were only so patient, I think that, you kind of were onto something with your proactive, preventative approach, and advice, because like a lot of the issues that, we see could be, all right, think about that for 5 minutes before you post, and not just while the adrenaline's going and while those endorphins are at like their all-time high and I need to record this right now. If you took a step back and took a couple breaths before you clicked send, a lot of these issues probably would be avoided. Tara, you're going to jump in there?
Yeah, no, there's a lot to unpack. I think it's so insightful in a culture that's very reactionary and instant. It's like if we can teach our children and our teenagers, like, okay, take a minute and think of like how that might make the other person feel, right? Maybe, and then because let's be honest, grown adults are doing the same thing. Maybe they're having some sort of corrective experience because they're still stuck in emotionally stunted from an earlier, that's another issue. But I think the message is ultimately, yeah, teaching your children, and also living by example, right? So you just, and good for your friend for being open to like share that. Like that's a good friend right there. Like that's huge. To help you change maybe your perspective and see things from it, like you're open to feedback. And so I love that. And yeah, social, I do agree with you. Social media is what you make it. It can be a great free marketing tool. It can help you to, understand projection and other people's insecurities and, change a lot of things. But I'm sure I'm going to maybe kind of add on to that, with your teenage daughter, are there parameters that you put on the posting or the sharing? Is there, any other tips that you can help us with the screen addiction? Especially even with entrepreneurs, they're struggling. Like, do they check? Like, how often should they check their social media? Because, oh, well, I have to do it for business, or I have to jump on this lead, I have to do this. in this, like, I have to, like, is there a line between like wanting to like take initiative and but also like not avoid, right? So like the balance. Could you speak to the balance?
Honestly, as someone with a bit of a social media addiction, I don't really feel qualified to answer that. I would be more apt to want to hear the answer to that if I'm
Okay.
being honest with you.
Yeah. No,
How is,
absolutely.
well,
I love
on
that.
that note, how has, um, as far as your other 9 to 5, how has your approach to marketing and advertising and speaking and kind of giving people advice changed even in the past, say, 5 years or 10 years? I don't know when the cutoff is, but what's been different as far as engaging audiences and how what trends have you seen? What trends are you looking towards moving forward the next year, 18 months?
I think as far as entrepreneurs go and businesses go on social media, way too many of them are just screaming about their products and services. And what they really need to do is provide value in other ways. I call it the rule of 3 E's. I tell every business owner that every single post should be either entertaining, educational, or engaging. And if it's not one of those three things, then you're just selling. And people don't like to be sold. They like to buy from someone who taught them something, or they like to buy from someone who makes them laugh. There's a plumbing company here in Kansas City called Morgan Miller Plumbing, and they used to post urinals from around the world. You know, like they would just take pictures of these urinals from all over the world, and they would post them on social media, and they would make me smile and laugh. There were some shaped like mouths and just weird urinals, right? But then when I have a plumbing issue, who do I always think of? I always think of Morgan Miller. Like that's just like who I think of. So that really works for them rather than saying, oh, well, we do, $60 toilet cleaning. I don't know, whatever. But
Right.
at the
Sure,
end of the
sure.
day,
So value.
it's those 3 E's. Yeah. Engagement, entertainment, and education.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I
Excellent.
love
Yeah,
that.
and I
This
mean,
is
you have
huge.
to, I mean, the space is getting more filled, right? I think, right? I mean, there's a lot of competition out there. So, utilizing one or all of those 3 E's, who knew you could be a cultured plumber and take people on a trip around the world and show them a little bit about toilets thousands of miles away. Yeah, but like you said, it stuck with you and, it ended up paying off for them and their business.
Would you say that that falls across all markets, be it if you're an entrepreneur in the spiritual circle or in, a traditional maintenance circle? Like same idea, education, entertainment, engagement.
Never really thought about like sectioning it off for different verticals, but like obviously Coca-Cola isn't going to educate you, but they probably do want to entertain you. They've got the bears drinking the
Yeah,
Coke
right.
bottles and stuff. Um, I think you got to find the balance, right? As a yoga instructor, I would think education would be much higher on your list than
Right.
it would be for entertainment, right? And thus the podcast, the whole process
Sure.
here is to provide great content for your users. Um, so yeah, I think it still is those 3 E's, but in different maybe amounts.
Is
Yeah.
is
Now,
mobile king now? I mean, that's got such a share of the market, right? That's where people consume so much now. Um, is focusing. I mean, there's a lot of overlap, right? But mobile, especially with younger buyers, right, and consumers, is that really where it's at?
Well, I read a statistic not that long ago that said we spend 8 hours a day on screens, and 5 of those are on our phone. So yeah, I would say
are people still
mobile's
going to the
king.
websites, or have they really, I guess, is that maybe part of your question, Brian? Like, is it the old school, like, let me type in the www, or is it, let me get on Instagram or TikTok?
I think most of that time is spent, well, No, I think the stats say that we spend a couple hours a day on social media. So that still leaves a lot of time to be doing other things. But that could be, playing Angry Birds. It could be checking,
True.
email. It could be a lot
Mm-hmm.
of different things, checking the weather. It could be watching YouTube videos. There's a lot of that going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, television has always been the boob tube, right? And we're still spending just as much time watching television now. Only the difference is most of us are watching streaming television on our own schedule. You don't have to sit down on Thursday night at 7 p.m. to watch Friends. You can just go to whatever streaming service has Friends and watch it whenever you want, right? So now we have this ability to consume content at our own pace, at our own time. And I think it means we're consuming more.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
And then one final question in the marketing area for our, I think everybody has a potential business, or, they can be a solopreneur, entrepreneur if they want to. What about the ideas person that has all the ideas but doesn't know where to start, even with like the 10 popular social media platforms? Where do they begin? Do they have a business plan? Do they start a YouTube channel? Do they start like a podcast? Do they go get more certifications? Is there any way you can kind of guide them, even be it just inspiration or practical?
I hate to admit it, but I'm going to suggest actually using AI to answer that question,
Ooh.
right? AI isn't really artificial intelligence, by the way. AI is just a really, really fast search of the web, right? So when you ask AI, help me write a training for a new salesperson, it's not thinking that up. It's just searching the web really fast and finding other trainings that have happened, right? If you ask ChatGPT to write you a country song, it's not writing that country song. It's going and finding all these other country songs, and it's creating an amalgamation according to your prompt, right? So right now, we live in a world where you can ask ChatGPT just about any question. Like, I'm an entrepreneur who wants to sell candles. How do I get started? And ChatGPT or whatever AI you like to use is going to save you the step of doing a Google search and then filtering through all the potential answers. It's just going to do that part for you. And it's going to say, as an entrepreneur trying to sell candles, here are 5 steps that you can take. Like, it's a great tool.
Yeah.
It's not truly a robot talking to you, though. You have to keep in mind, it's the wisdom of the internet that was all created by humans. And guess what? If AI at some point reads every single book, if it reads The Power of Now and Conversations with God and The Secret, we're going to be able to ask it really important questions, and it might be able to give us really good answers. So that could be really interesting too.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That was
Yeah,
an
that's
excellent answer. So
It was.
helpful.
you gotta,
Yeah.
well, when you're,
It
in
really
that
helped.
cutting, yeah, and you have to embrace technology, right? Or you're going to be left behind by it in some ways. One more from me, before we close. 50 hours a week working, being a father, overcoming, some definitely daunting health challenges, writing books. I was going to go with productivity-based, advice, inquiry. What can people do that are starting out that might have a 9 to 5 that they're not happy with, are great authors, and they want to kind of pursue that, or have an idea, like my sister had said, and the light bulb went off, and there's something that they can do as far as starting a small business. The productivity piece, is there any habits or routines that you adhere to that really get you to make the most of your time?
I've got a pretty simple answer for this one. Cut out something and you'll have time for something new. If you're on your phone for 8 hours a day or 5 hours a day and you're watching 3 hours a day of television, what if you just cut one of those hours out? You would suddenly have 7 hours a week to do something else. People are always asking me, how do I have time for all that stuff? I'm like, I make the time. I get the same 24 hours that you do. So I just choose to spend them on my personal projects rather than vegging out in front of the television or playing video games or, going to a 4-hour baseball game. Now, I do that sometimes too, right? I'm not saying any of those things are bad, but if you have a bad habit or a habit that you can just cut a little bit out of, man, you can open up a whole new world of time for whatever project that you want to do. It's all possible.
Yeah. I
Awesome.
love that. Wonderful message.
All right. We have been joined by the multifaceted, multi-talented Mr. David McBee. David, where can they find your book? Where can they find some opportunities, maybe to hear you coaching? Wherever they can, learn some more online. Where's the best place to get started with that?
I try to be pretty easy to find, and because I've been in internet marketing for 20 years, a Google search for David McBee will pretty
Nice.
much lead you to
All
all
right.
of my stuff. DavidMcBee.com is like my main base, and there's a button in the top right-hand corner that says Everything David, and that will actually lead to all my social media, all the DJ's Off-Road Adventures, all my books, my podcasts. I even have a playlist on there.
Cool.
It's called my About Hope playlist, and it has been instrumental in my my journey with cancer. So if you're ever just having a bad day and you want to hear some amazing, uplifting songs, my About Hope playlist is right there too.
Amazing.
Couldn't have ended it on a better note.
No.
Thank you so much.
This has been so enlightening. I'm so honored that we got a chance to meet and discuss, and wishing the best, and definitely stay in touch. Love to have
I'm
you
so
back.
grateful to you guys. Thank you. You're an amazing host, and your questions were beautiful.